Welcome back. My name is Vern, and today we will be giving you a news update on New Zealand. Now, in New Zealand, they work under the Royal Commission, the same as Australia, and that's what we're looking at today. We're looking at a little bit of an update on this subject. If you've been following it, this article is about a month old. And then after this, we're going to talk a little bit about anti-vaxxing in New Zealand and what happened with some Jehovah's Witnesses. So let's get right into the news for today, this little news update on New Zealand. And if you don't know, Jehovah's Witnesses are having problems in Australia and all over the world, but the Royal Commission in Australia has really opened up some of the major issues within the religion. And we're going to get into that here in this article. So I'll let the article do the speaking, and I will change my screen a bit here. So there we are, and get rid of that one. Now I'm right out of the picture here. But you can still hear me, so eventually I'll come back in. Now here it is, Jehovah's Witnesses apply for judicial review of the Royal Commission of Inquiry into the Abuse and Care. The Royal Commission of Inquiry into the Abuse and Care is being challenged in the court by one of the institutions it's investigating, and Aaron Smale reports this. Now, in case you don't know, this is from the newsroom. The newsroom, we thank you for your information, newsroom. And that's where this information is coming, and Aaron Smale is the editor on this article. So the Royal Commission, the Jehovah's Witness Church, or Kingdom Hall, has filed an application for a judicial review of the Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse and Care, arguing it doesn't bear responsibility for care of children, and that no abuse occurred that was within the scope of the inquiry. So here again, Jehovah's Witnesses are going to court, paying for legal fees, filling out forms, rebutting this one. And I think the problem here now is that there's too many people on this side of the fence, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, that are speaking out, and we can now communicate on social media like we're doing today. So we're going to go on and just look at this article a little further. It says the Royal Commission of Inquiry, Abuse and Care, has been investigating abuse in the state and the Kingdom Halls since 2018. The Commission has made a statement that the Jehovah's Witnesses have filed an application for a judicial review. The Royal Commission confirms the Christian Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses Limited has filed an application for judicial review. So you notice they have, it's Australia Limited, that's how they did it. So now Jehovah's Witnesses, everything's a legal, excuse me, a legal corporation. So all over the world, everything's a little legal corporation. And their hopes is to limit their liability. But if you follow my channel, and if you go back a few videos, I talked about Brumley, the Jehovah's Witness lawyer, and how he tried to pitch this in court, all these little companies, and that the headquarters is not responsible for any of how these congregations work. And he got shot down, and he lost. The victims actually sued him, the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, because they knew it was a complete lie, and they won. And Brumley got charged a $150,000 fine, plus he had to pay it. And that's the Jehovah's Witness lawyer. Now again, I've mentioned a couple of times in Pennsylvania, the Jehovah's Witnesses are now using Matt Haverstick. And if you look that up, he's the Catholic diocese lawyer. And he's been fighting in Pennsylvania for the Catholic diocese now for a lot of years. So now the Jehovah's Witnesses have went to him to fight for the Watchtower. Quite interesting what's happening in this time that we're living in right now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. We're a small channel. We're just my wife and I, my good wife. She does all the work in the background. I just get up and speak. And I was an ex-Jehovah's Witness for 30 years. So, I can attest to what's happening here. Now, here's what's happening. They filed an application for a judicial review, arguing that it's outside of the scope of the Royal Commission's term of reference. So they're looking for little ways to fight and get out of this. Now, the church seeks, or Jehovah's Witnesses, the Watchtower, they seek declarations from the High Court that Jehovah's Witnesses do not assume responsibility for the care of children, young people, or vulnerable people in New Zealand, and that there are no instances of abuse by Jehovah's Witness faith within scope of the inquiry based on the evidence before the Royal Commission, together with several other declarations about the Royal Commission's process. So here you go. Jehovah's Witnesses are going hard at it, pointing fingers all over. You guys don't have the right to look into us. We don't care for children, young people, or vulnerable people. Well, you and I know as ex-Jehovah's Witnesses that that's baloney. How many times do we go out in the ministry? We go to the field service group and our cars are segregated. And sometimes one of our kids goes with that elder and his family, and the other kid might go over there with that family. And then maybe, and they try to mix us up in the congregations, and that's how it is all over the world. And that's how Jehovah's Witnesses do it. So every weekly in the field ministry, Jehovah's Witness children are put out there with other families. They're put in care. And it's usually the exemplary ones, like the elders, the ministerial servants, the pioneers are very highly trusted. But other members of the congregation are too. And I remember when I was raising my family, we wouldn't use daycare outside of we would find families or Jehovah's Witnesses. It wasn't recommended to place your children in daycare because you're subjecting them to the world. And it's the world's wicked. And that's what we were taught as Jehovah's Witnesses, that the world is wicked. And so therefore we would leave our children with other families, elders, and then maybe they go out in service with them, pioneers. We trusted, and the organization taught us to trust the ones taking the lead, especially elders, pioneers, and exemplary ones. And to be exemplary using mics, if you're using mics, you could be an exemplary young person. Just means that your field ministry time has to be up there, above the national average. That makes you exemplary. And of course that you don't have any reproaches on you. You don't have restrictions. You're not out there smoking or drinking or doing anything. You're trying to be an upstanding Jehovah's Witness. So there's a lot of exemplary Jehovah's Witnesses that we left our children with. So this here is baloney. Before I get on, I want to tell you why Jehovah's Witnesses in these articles, when they appear in front of news media, why they don't tell the truth, why they just blatantly tell it not truthfully. Why? I'm going to show you an article. Let's see if it pulls it up here. I went to jw.org, and just to show you I'm on there, jw.org, and I plugged in Theocratic warfare strategy. And it comes right up. That's all it does. Use theocratic war strategy. Now, when you go into that article, I'm going to get off the picture here, and I'm going to change the display. We'll go right into big screen here. Now, there's the, maybe I'll try this screen. Nope. So we'll go back to my news screen here, my big screen. There we are. So now I'm just going to read it to you here. The last two paragraphs of this article, use theocratic war strategy. Now, I covered this article on one of my other videos, you'll notice. And this is where Jehovah's Witnesses are given permission to not tell the truth. So, you can't tell lies and untruth for selfish reasons, is what they're trying to say. And Satan told a lie to Eve that worked great harm to her and all the human race. So they kind of blame it on Satan and Eve, the woman. And that's not a good thing. Now, here's where it is. A great work is being done by witnesses, even in lands where their activity is banned. And the only way they can fulfill the command to preach the good news of God's kingdom is by use of theocratic war strategy. By underground methods, the literature is brought into the country and distributed. Would it make sense to hide this literature by one's actions and then reveal its whereabouts by one's words when queried? Of course not. So in time of spiritual warfare, it is proper to misdirect the enemy by hiding the truth. So you see, folks, I'm going to get back on the screen here because this is an important subject. They're saying that in time of warfare, it's proper to misdirect the enemy by hiding the truth. You see, so the whole world's the enemy. The news media is the enemy. And we're going to cover this on one of our lives about David Splain and how he explains to the world how the news media, the juries, they're all the enemy and they're telling lies. They're not telling the whole truth. So we're going to cover that on one of our lives. But this is such an important point. Their news media, the Jehovah's Witness news media all over the world, there's certain elders that are selected. And they are taught Theocratic war strategy. And they're taught to shape their words wisely so that they don't have to tell the whole truth. So that's what's happening here. And it says here at the last part of this article, today, it says here, I'll just get out of here. Today, God's servants are engaged in a warfare, spiritual theocratic warfare, a warfare ordered by God against wicked spirit forces and against false teachings. So you see, the warfare is ordered by the watchtower because it's not ordered by God. I'm just going to scroll up in this article. There's not one scripture in this article. They quote Matthew 10. And it says, "Look, I'm sending you out as sheep among wolves, so prove yourselves cautious as servants, yet innocent of doves." Jesus said that. He didn't say to lie. There's nothing in there that says to lie. There's no other scripture here. Nothing in this article. This is all Watchtower words. So this is where we have to be careful when reading Watchtower words. It's their words. This is not scriptural at all. Because the Bible, we covered this in one of our last articles, the Bible does not teach you to lie. So, the warfare ordered by God against wicked spirit forces, against false teachings, and God's servants are sent forth as sheep among wolves, and therefore need to exercise extreme caution and lie, is what they're saying. Extreme caution of servants as to protect properly the interests of God's kingdom by lying. And at all times, they must be very careful. They must lie, not to divulge the truth, information, to the courts, the enemy, the news people, to anybody outside of the Jehovah's Witness. They don't deserve the truth. They're the enemy. And they could use that to hamper the preaching work. And this is how they end up. It's going to hamper God's preaching work. But it's watchtowers. It's watchtowers pumping out of their literature and their ideologies. So we're going to cover this in a live. It's really a very narcissistic way of thinking. But folks, this is the rest of the story, and that's what you sign up on this channel to see. So we're going to carry on and see what the Commission says about all of this. Now, the Commission offered no further comment because the matter is now, and I'm just going to go on to this screen here. I might as well get right in here with you. So the Commission offered no further comment because the matter is now before the courts. In Australia, the Royal Commission of Inquiry into Institutional Response Child Sexual Abuse heard from 70 victims who alleged abuse in Jehovah's Witness institutions and 33 victims who alleged abuse in Brethren churches in Kingdom Halls. The Australian Commission report stated that 70 survivors told us about abuse in Jehovah's Witnesses. Of the victims, we heard about 80% were female. The average age of the victims at the time of the first abuse was 8.4 years. Of the 53 survivors who told us about the age of the person sexually abused them, 44 survivors, 83%, told us about abuse by an adult, and 12 survivors, 22.6%, told us about abuse by a child. A small number of survivors told us about sexual abuse by an adult and by a child. The vast majority of survivors who told us about abuse by an adult perpetrator said they were abused by a male adult. So there's quite a lot of work put into the Australian Commission. And so these statistics are going to help the whole world moving forward in dealing with Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, here's the real problem that the whole world, and when we look at the whole world, we're all a collective consciousness, really. And now we're on the internet, and there's a collective consciousness in the world that says hiding pedophiles, coming up with excuses for them or to protect our religion and our image, that concept is a thing of the past. And this has already been fought with the Catholic Church. The Pope had to get up and apologize to the world for the atrocities that their religion caused in this same regard. So it's not only the Jehovah's Witnesses. So now the Jehovah's Witnesses are in the spotlight. They're in front of the world over the last few years, and now it's their turn to face the consequences. And they are not apologizing, and they are not getting involved in the government, and they're not changing policies. You see, the Catholic Church changed a bunch of policies, and they say, well, that was the Catholic Church of the last century. We have a brand new Catholic Church. We changed all our policies, and it runs completely different. You see, other religions are changing their policies, and they're looking at this, and they're saying, yeah, this is garbage. We can't run that way no more. It's protecting pedophiles. You see, people are becoming part of a collective consciousness. And all over the world, we all agree that what I'm going to read next is complete baloney, what the Jehovah's Witnesses are doing. So here it is. The Royal Commission's asking for something very reasonable. So the report also criticized the witnesses for applying the rule of two witnesses to validate an alleged allegation of sexual abuse. So they're telling an infant you have to have two witnesses before you go to mummy. It doesn't work that way. So the report said as long as Jehovah's Witness organization continues to apply these practices in its response to allegations of child sexual abuse, it will remain an organization that does not respond adequately to child sexual abuse and that fails to protect children. We recommend that Jehovah's Witnesses organization abandon its application of the two-witness rule in cases involving complaints of child sexual abuse. The recommendation is 16.27, and revise its policies so that women are involved in the process of relating to investigating. So they're asking for something reasonable. Let's get women involved in family counseling. And if we're going to have these religions, they have to have family counseling, women involved, sitting in these judicial meetings, and not just three elders sitting in front of a child. That's nonsense. That's garbage. That all has to be reversed. So women involved investigating and determining allegations of child sexual abuse, and no longer require its members to shun those who disassociate from the organization. So here's the other one. You leave the Jehovah's Witness organization, you're shunned. None of the religions do that. If you're a Muslim and you leave, and a year later you're down the street and the Muslim bishop or whatever elder sees you, he gives you a hug. Hey, brother, I haven't seen you. Maybe you left, you didn't agree with their policies. He still hugs you. Same with every other church. No one shuns like the Jehovah's Witness. So I left amicably. I just left. Quit going. But 8 years later, they chased me down and shunned me and publicly humiliated me and called me all kinds of things. So that's part of why I'm on this channel doing the work I'm doing, is because of this shunning for no reason at all. So this is something that the collective consciousness all over the world, the Royal Commission is tackling this. They're saying no longer require its members to shun who disassociate from the organization in the cases where the reasons for disassociation is related to a person being a victim of child sexual abuse, especially for that. And this is what's happened. Children would come forth, and eventually leave the religion, and they get shunned because they left the religion, these victims. So while the Australian Commission heard directly from 70 victims of abuse in Jehovah's Witnesses, it indicated that the abuse was far more widespread And in its report, it said, as part of our case study, the Jehovah's Witness organization provided us with files containing allegations, reports, or complaints of child sexual abuse. They provided us with documents relating to at least 1,800 children and over 1,000 alleged perpetrators. So that's the end of the article, folks. It's the Jehovah's Witness organization, it's coming out, has a lot of problems in this regard to hiding child sex abuse. So it's coming out, and it's going to keep coming out until it's done coming out. And the theocratic warfare, they're not buying it. They're not buying it because everyone knows that Jehovah's Witnesses headquarters were telling their people to shred records in relation to CSA cases. We covered that on our channel. So we're going to move over. Another problem that New Zealand has, and they're tackling, is anti-vax guardianship case. So I don't know if you're an anti-vaxxer, if you're not. The interest part of the article here for us is right here, Jehovah's Witnesses. So here it is. The case, have there been other cases? Yes. This appears to be the first New Zealand about blood transfusions in the COVID-19 vaccine, but there have been cases in the past 10 years where the courts have stepped in, mostly in connection with parents' religious beliefs. For instance, in 2013, the 10-month-old daughter of a Jehovah's Witness couple was put into guardianship of a high court for 9 months so doctors could give her life-saving cancer treatment. And a case a year earlier reached a similar conclusion after the Jehovah's Witness parents of the 2-year-old girl would not consent to the kidney and liver transplant she needed because of the use of transfused blood, which is contrary to the Jehovah's Witness faith. Now, in 2015, a father refused medicine for his HIV positive child because he believed it would kill his child. The court ruled in favor of the hospital. Now, this is what's happening. So Jehovah's Witnesses are in the limelight for not caring for their children. They would rather let their child die when there's medical treatments available to save the child. And we cover this on lives on our Tuesday night JW Night Talk. We cover stuff like this where there's all kinds of cases in the past regarding smallpox. For instance, we can go way back then to the early 1900s. Jehovah's Witnesses were against it. A whole pile of people died, and then they retracted and said, no, it's okay now, but they didn't apologize. And they did this with blood. At first, blood. You couldn't take any kind of blood. Then you could do fractions. Then you could do this. And then they said at first you couldn't do organ transplants and stuff like that. And then they said you could. So how many people die as a result of their misinterpretation of what God is telling the governing body? You see, there's nothing in the scriptures that talk about this. But what the scriptures do say is to look after orphans and widows. And that's in James 1:27. We don't get into the scriptures too hard when we deliver the news, but the Bible does support caring for orphans, widows, and children. So children are our future. So if you and I don't look after our children, if we don't stand up for the children of tomorrow, if we don't do that today, we won't have a tomorrow. So let's all stand up for our children. Let's support what the Royal Commission is doing here. We will keep you up to date on what happens. And that brings us back to our news studio. So I'll just put myself back up here, and that brings our program to a conclusion today. So if you haven't yet subscribed, we invite you to do so. It really helps a small channel like ours grow. Our objective is to get our message out to the whole world, and in order to do that, the YouTube algorithms depends on you. So a like, share, and a subscribe pushes our video even further. And thank you for all your support. So until next time, keep living your life with love. Bye for now.